Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ikigai Awakening podcast. And I guess this is something different because I'm standing here, sitting here, introducing the podcast, and I have the host of the podcast sitting next to me. My name is Kofi Simpson. I guess I can say I'm a man of many things in the talent acquisition space, and I'm a Toastmaster and a podcaster. But today I have been asked and tasked with the privilege of interviewing Nerina Coffee, who is the host of the Ikigai Awakening podcast. And the objective is for us to kind of actually unpack and understand who Nerina is and to go through her journey through life, the podcast and the different aspects of her life and why we're having this podcast. And for us to have a deeper understanding of who the woman behind the podcast is. Nerina, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Nerina, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you, Kofi, and thank you for doing this interview.
More than a pleasure. I must thank you for inviting me because this is good practice. And I guess it's a building of network and relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you very much for inviting me. And I'm just going to jump straight into it.
Perfect.
The objective for today is for us to understand who you are. I always say this, I interview for a living. I have people's CVs in front of me. And the question that we always ask is, yes, we have your CV in front of you, but tell us who you are. Tell us about yourself. So let's understand firstly who Nerina Coffee is.
I guess I would say that I'm a woman of many things. I think my life experiences have molded me into the person I am. I'd like to think that more than anything, I'm a woman of empathy and understanding and kindness.
Okay.
Firstly, but I'm also a mother.
Okay.
And I'm a businesswoman. And I'm a daughter and a wife, not a wife anymore,
okay.
A widow actually. Okay. Yes, and many other things. I think it would take a long time to describe who I really am. But yeah, I would say that I'm a woman
who has transitioned and who has lived a life of different things. Okay, and we'll unpack the different things. But I just want to start back from foundation. Psychologists always say that childhood defines who we become as adults, and we don't understand how deep childhood is and how it transcends. And why me saying that is, where were you born? Family, how many kids? Let's start from there.
So I was born in Lenasia, which is commonly known as Lens, which is a town southwest of Johannesburg. Okay. I was born into a family I'm one of 5 siblings. Okay. I come from a very...
Which number? We want to know.
Second child.
Second child, okay.
Yes. So I had an older brother who's now passed away, and then 3 sisters in between, and then we've got a younger brother.
Okay.
So very warm family, very, I would say, a home where we were allowed to have a voice. Okay. So that was important. Okay. I grew up in a home where I had a voice, which I think is a big thing. As I've gotten older, I've realized how important it is as a child to have a voice.
And I can say, coming from an African family, I was even speaking to a friend, it's like, we don't know how to express ourselves. So I come from that environment. Yes. And realizing obviously the world is evolving and people having a voice. So I think it's very good that you had that opportunity as a young person growing up in that family dynamic. So you grew up in Lenasia as a kid, went through school, matric. After matric, did you further your studies? Or did you start working?
So I went to a primary school in Lenasia, and then I went to high school. Was very, very different at the time because I grew up in the apartheid years. So I was fortunate enough to go to one of the first non-racial schools in the country. And I think that school had a huge impact on who I am today and how I view the world. I wasn't great at school. I wasn't one of those top academic students. But
maybe, and I'm going to interrupt you, but I need to be very careful in terms of how I mince. And just speaking to some of my colleagues, from an Indian perspective, academics is the be it and be all. Your parents didn't give you a hard time on that?
No, I actually have, my parents are actually wonderful.
Okay.
We were allowed to thrive when we were ready to thrive.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of what happened to me. When I finished school, I did many things. I did fashion designing, I did bookkeeping, I did lots of different things. It took me a while to find where I wanted to be.
Okay.
When I say a while, it took a long time.
Okay.
But I think as a woman, or in my case, I definitely evolved and changed so many times depending on the circumstances that I was in. So yeah, I didn't study something specifically in the early years.
The early years. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, that's great. And I guess we all go through different journeys. I'm understanding, and there's a speech I'm working around. But I mean, education is not the be and be all. I mean, you need a foundation. And there's a friend that I just met, the most intelligent woman I've met in terms of how she speaks, you know. And through life, we obviously evolve specifically. Okay, cool. So from high school transition, what happened after high school?
Well, you know, the usual, you meet people, you date, you have fun, you've got friends, and you're still trying to find your place in the world. I guess my big change or impact happened when I met my husband.
Okay.
We were friends and we met, and there was such an incredible friendship that developed from that.
Okay.
And he became somebody that I really respected and looked up to. And I think in the same way, or rather he felt the same way about me. So there was a lot of encouragement and a lot of support that came from him, even just as a friend initially.
Okay. Okay. So how did you meet your husband? Help me with the correct word. Your late husband. Yeah, your late husband.
Our parents had known each other before, but they had lost contact, and you know, and it was just one day that his mom bumped into my mom, and they started chatting and speaking and all of that. And then later down the line, I met him. Okay. And he invited me to a party, and we went to this party, and we spent from that party we went on to a nightclub, and we just sat and spoke and spoke and spoke and spoke for hours, and then from there a wonderful friendship bloomed.
Okay, so you guys started as friends?
Yeah, we started off as friends. We were friends for a year.
For a year, and then who got out of the friendship zone? Because I hear that thing is very difficult. I mean, maybe times are different, but you know, when people become friends, and I think for me, the evolution of relationship through friendship is a great foundation.
Yeah.
So how did it transition from a friendship into a relationship?
I think he'd say that it was me that
liked him first.
Yeah, and I'd say it was him, but I think it was a mutual thing.
Okay.
It was almost like a natural development. We all went away as friends. There was a whole group of us that went away, and then I think him and I had just spoken and said we were gonna see if it, you know,
in the old days,
it was going to develop into something more.
For me, things have changed the dating scene. I'm single, but in the old days, how things happen is like, will you be my girlfriend? Did you go through that transition?
When they ask you out,
when they ask you
out, yes. Like all your friends, has he asked you out yet? Yes, it was something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you dated for how long before you?
For a year.
For a year.
Yeah.
So friendship for a year, relationship for a year, and you got engaged.
Married. Yeah.
You got married, engaged after a year.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember how you proposed?
Oh, we were very easygoing. So during those years, we'd spend a lot of time in what was then hip and happening Hillbrow.
Okay.
It was very hip.
Hillbrow.
The Hillbrow we know today.
Okay.
Very different to the Hillbrow, you know, it was in those years. And we'd also go to Yeovil.
Okay.
Which was very, very trendy. And initially there was a place called the Tandoor. It was a fabulous chicken place that we loved. It was in Hillbrow, and then they moved to Yeovil. And the one day we were sitting there, and I think we were having lunch, and he just said, I want to marry you. It was very like unexpected, very casual.
Okay.
And that was it. He asked me to marry him, and I said yes.
Yes, on the spot, no flashy things and just...
No balloons, no confettis, nothing like that. There was no ring.
There was no, okay. No. So I just want to bring it back and make it a bit more humanistic. We talk about your late husband, and I want to start referring to him by his name. If you don't mind, what?
Dean.
Okay. So we'll talk about Dean. Okay. So you and Dean decided to get married, and we had kids.
Well, we got married. We didn't have much when we got married. We were both working, not earning that much money. Yeah. And we both knew that we weren't ready for kids. Okay. I think financially we weren't ready. We didn't have our own home. We were living in a 1-bedroom little flat in the south of Joburg. We didn't really plan when or how or what was going to happen. But anyway, 5 years down the line was when we had our first child. Okay, cool. So we kind of waited 5 years. Okay. And then I fell pregnant after 5 years.
Yeah. How old were you when you guys got married?
I just turned 24 and he had just turned 25.
Okay.
So we're quite young.
Okay, so
by
around
today's
30s you got
standards.
your first child. And how many kids did you have?
So I've got 2 children, 2 biological children, and I've got an adopted 12-year-old.
Oh, the adoption thing is something that's ringing to me, but hopefully we'll get opportunity to talk about that. So you've got 2 kids, you've got a 12-year-old, and how old are the 2 kids?
So my son's 28 and my daughter's turning 25 soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're all working?
Yes, they finished their studies, and my son works as a civil engineer, and my daughter, well, she's currently studying a master's.
Okay.
So she's not quite there yet, but getting there slowly.
Smart kids you have. Yeah. Masters in?
Sciences. So she did initially she did human genetics and neurophysiology. So it's all science.
Okay. No, great foundation in terms of that. And how long were you and your husband Dean together before he passed away?
The year that he passed away, we would have been married for 29 years.
29 years. That's a long time, eh?
Yeah.
And for me, the little conversations that I've had and I've seen, it seemed like this was a very deep relationship. I think living in the society and the things that I see, and I'm not married, marriage seems to be very tough. Relationships seems to be very complicated, and we idolize as kids, we idolize the concept of marriage, but we don't know how difficult it is. And from what you've told me and what I've seen, it seems like you guys had a great connection. We
really did. We had a wonderful connection. I when I tell people that we had a great marriage, I don't say that, it wasn't perfect.
Yes, nothing is perfect.
It was not perfect because I think any marriage has ups and downs. You're with someone all day, every day, so you're bound to have clashes and disagreements and stuff. But there was always a mutual understanding, a mutual respect, and openness to always express how we were feeling, although some of us, I think sometimes I was over-expressive. Dean was very level-headed. But there was always that. And, we created our own way of doing our marriage. Because when we decided to get married, many people said to us, marriage is difficult and you're young and there's so many challenges. Do you not want to wait a little bit longer? But we wanted to get married. And I always say we got married for the right reasons. Because I think today, or not just today, I think there are lots of people that really get married for the wrong reasons. People are scared to be alone, or they feel that they cannot function without somebody in their lives, or whatever the reason may be. But we didn't have that. I think we got married for the right reasons. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about security. It wasn't about any of that. We just wanted to be together. It
was 2 people who met, who got along very well, and realized, you know what, we can do this life thing together. I don't want to do life without you, and I want to do life with you. And we've got to battle and struggle through those kind of things. And one of the key things for me that I also just want to learn, and some of the conversations I have, is like, what are the characteristics when you look about it? What made your guys' marriage great? And I have a friend who says in his marriage, their foundation is teamwork. We work on our strengths and weaknesses. So I go to his house, I want white wine, he'll help me. If I want red wine, the wife will help me. So, you kind of work on your balances and what works. So just from a characteristic perspective, when you look back at your marriage, what were the key foundations?
I think it was that, but I also think there was this understanding that we were equals. We had our roles to play in our marriage. Like there were certain things I needed to do and there were certain things he needed to do. But it wasn't because I was the wife and he was the husband. There were certain things that he was just better at doing than I was. And there were certain things that I was better at doing. So I would do them. So then, we just went, it wasn't, he makes the decisions because he's the husband. He's the head of the household. Yes, I understand somebody has to. There has to be a leader. There's got to be a lead. But I had a voice. As a wife, I had a voice and a respect for his part as a partner, not as a woman. Yes, I am a woman. Yes, I was his wife, but I wasn't treated or expected to behave in a subservient way in our marriage.
You're both subservient to each other, if that made sense.
Well, maybe yes. I'd say so. But we were equals. If I wanted to do something, we discuss it. It wouldn't be, no, you can't do that. We discuss it. And for instance, if I needed to do a cause, and if it was a very expensive cause, we'd discuss it. And the only thing he'd say was, well, look, we have to look at affordability.
Okay.
Not, no, you can't do that. Okay. Or where's that, you're a woman. You're not supposed to do things like that. Or you can't go away for a few days to go and do a cause. What's going to happen to the home? Who's going to run the home? There was none of that.
Okay, let's find a solution and work together on both sides of the fence. Yeah. I have a friend who same thing, introduced into Airbnb, and that's something I'm part of. And she was like, let me go speak to my husband. Let's discuss it, and those kind of things. But I'm also interested, I guess, maybe something that's trending around. Were you guys married in community or property?
No, so Dean and I were very, I think that's also one of the reasons we were so compatible, is because we always did our homework.
Okay.
And even as young as we were then, we knew that community of property was not the way to go.
Okay.
For many reasons.
Okay.
So we went with married out of community of property with the accrual system.
Okay.
So that worked perfectly for us, and that's what we wanted. And we had spoken to lawyers about it, and we did, whatever homework we needed to do, we did. Okay. And it actually worked out great. And if I could give any young couple advice, I'm not saying you mustn't do community of property, but before you make the decision, do your homework.
It's a bit more complex than what seems. And I think, and why I'm asking is, like, just from a trend, it's back in the day that was the norm.
Yes.
And now I guess the accrual and people obviously navigate antinuptials and obviously when people are in business, you've got to find a way to separate. Otherwise it creates complexity.
Yes.
In terms of that. So obviously, like, the foresight thinking that you guys had. Yeah. At that point in time. So you guys were married for 29 years.
Yes.
And unfortunately, Dean passed away.
Yes.
Can you just give me a bit more context around the circumstances that led to his death?
So it was COVID, and we had just I think it was lockdown, and then just after lockdown, we still went on a little small family or a small little holiday. Dean had a very rare immune disorder, so he wasn't always well.
Okay.
And then the Delta version.
That was the second wave.
Yeah, that was the second wave. He got COVID, and in less than 2 weeks he was gone. So I think it was completely unexpected, because even though we knew the possibility was always there for any one of us, you don't expect it. You don't want to think about it. You don't think it's going to affect your household, even though at the time you were hearing stories all the time, all day, every day, about people passing away from COVID. We knew so many people, but didn't think it was going to affect your household. So that was tough.
As you talk about it, I'll be honest with you, I'm shivering. And I've got goosebumps just thinking about the effects of COVID and how it unfortunately had a lot of negative impacts on people's lives. But I guess it is what it is. And I can't believe we're 5 years, 6 years past COVID, and time has really passed through, that phase of our lives. So my condolences to you on that specifically. So I guess one of the key things that I also want to understand and obviously unpack is the emotional grief around that period of time. And I remember we had a Toastmaster session, and there was a speech that was given, and unfortunately I think you cried for a period of time. So it's still something that touches you. So if you can just talk us through that grieving aspect of that part of your life, and how you managed to, proceed and move past it.
So I would say it was one of the worst periods of my life.
Okay.
The time that he was in hospital and not knowing what the outcome is going to be, and you praying and you're staying positive and you want to be positive for your children, and then it happens and your whole world is shattered. So, you wake up every day, and there are many aspects of that period that I don't remember.
Okay.
What I do remember is that heaviness that you wake up with every day. And the hardest part was waking up every morning and knowing he's gone. He's gone. You wake up and it's a reminder, and then you see your children crying, and then you crying, and there's things going on around you, and he's not here. And even in your grief-stricken state, there's things to be done.
Okay.
You need to find a way to cope with the grief and still continue. And it was very, very difficult because I went through a stage where I wasn't sleeping properly. I wasn't eating properly. I was trying to be strong on the outside, but on the inside, I was just crumbling. I'd use late nights, and close my door and cry. But I found out afterwards that my children would still hear and
hear you cry.
Yeah, and then I started I thought, okay, well, I'm going to have a glass of wine and maybe feel better. But alcohol actually doesn't work because it just makes you feel worse. And there's so many things that it was just completely and utterly devastating. And then there were things that I had to do. There was a whole lot of admin that needed to be done. And then there was the house that needed seeing to. And then you had to make sure that bills had to be paid. And there was, it was like my world had come to a complete standstill, but the world was still continuing.
Yeah.
You still had to pay bills. You still had to show off for certain things. The kids were in their final year of university. They had to go and write their final exams. There's all of these things happening. So, it was horrible. It really, really, really was awful. And you in that state, you almost feel like you're never going to get out of it. It's never going to get better. When people come to you and say, you will start feeling a little bit better, your grief, you think, no, how is it even possible? Yeah.
I mean, I had a colleague whose grandmother passed away in December, and she's like 28 years old, and she was saying to her parents, I need to go before you guys because I can't handle this pain of dealing with grief. So you can't bring the person back. You can't, do anything about it. And for me, the one thing that I guess holistically that I empathize and I struggle with is, the concept of you give birth to someone for 4 months. I mean, you give birth to someone. For 3 months later, you got to be at work and you got to continue with life.
Yes.
And you've got to navigate through a child crying and working and balancing all of these things. Your child is sick. And that seems like a complex, simplistic thing, but also now the grief and having to go to work.
Yes.
So from that point in time, were you still working, business related? How were you managing the day-to-day things of moving on with life while?
Well, I still had my business. I had a beauty business at the time and I had that. But because I had established such great relationships with my clients, they were all very supportive, very understanding. Okay. They all knew that I said, you know what, I need to take an indefinite break. Okay. I'm not quite sure for how long, but I just need to take a little bit of break. I couldn't see myself doing anything. I couldn't. And the thing is, if I remember correctly, I did try and go back and start working, but then all I was doing was just crying. The clients would cry, I'd cry, and then I realized, you know what, I need to put this on hold now. Okay. Let's just wait and see. And that's what I did for a while. Okay. Because there was a lot of things that I needed to take care of and sort out and help my children with, and just try and navigate this path of grief, intense grief. The thing is, Dean was such a wonderful man, and he was so present, and
the kids' lives also, right?
Yes. So it was like he was ripped away from us, and now we had to find a way. We were such a complete family. Our family was complete. We had this family that was together, and everything was just fine. And even though he had health issues, but he was still there.
Okay.
With his health issues, he was still there. And now this is ripped.
Okay.
So now you're having to figure out, how do you do this alone? How do you go from being a wife,
spending almost 30 years with one person?
Yes.
And it is difficult. I mean, I have an uncle who's trying to retire. He's been trying to retire for like 4 or 5 years, then to live his life. Established a great business and about to retire, and his wife just passed away, and his kids are now in a different country. And they came back to a certain point. Now he has to move on, and the support structure around that, and living your life with someone for so long and they disappear. I think it is very, very difficult and tragic. And I understand the pain that you obviously went through. So from my side now, obviously understanding the challenges and the emotional aspects of that you went through. How were you able to eventually pull out and become a little bit more stable, a little bit more, I guess we can say less emotional and more functional in society?
So, in my case, I went through these really highs and lows. When I say highs, not highs as in feeling good, but like where I'm okay. I feel I'm okay. And then all of a sudden, I'm not okay. So I had to acknowledge that.
Okay.
And I had to find a way to deal with that. And therapy is something that I had to go for.
Okay.
And then I remember there was a time where I was waking up every morning with this empty feeling, like this really, really bad feeling. And one morning I remember waking up and it was almost like he was speaking to me. I'm not saying that he was, but it's almost like I could hear his voice saying, you don't have a choice. You know, maybe it was my inner voice. I don't know. You don't have a choice, or else you only have two choices. You're going to stay in this dark place, or you're going to get up and you're going to go. Now, I know the kind of man Dean was, and I knew very well. And I know he would say to me, you got to get up and you've got to go and you've got to continue.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, okay, I know this is going to be hard, but I'm going to have to I'm making that decision, and I'm going to get up and I'm going to go. I don't know how, but I'm not staying in the dark place. Okay. I knew for sure I didn't want to stay in the dark place.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to stay there, but I made the decision not to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I like what you said from a therapy aspect of things. What was the tipping point that made you decide to go to therapy?
So I had been for other reasons, you know, when life got in the way of things, where I'd been for therapy before, but I knew that I wasn't coping with the emotions that I was feeling, seeing my children like that, having to do all the things that I now had to do, coming to terms with the fact that I'm now a widow, I'm a single woman, I'm going to have to navigate life alone. How do I do all of this alone? And then I knew you need to book a session with a therapist.
Okay.
And that's what I did. And I was quite religious about going for sessions. Okay. I didn't have like a standing appointment, but I made sure that I went.
How many times a month did you go?
I would try. I think initially I was going like 2 or 3 times a month. But
therapists are not cheap.
No. But I knew I needed it. And then there were times where I felt, I need this every day. But obviously from a cost perspective, and I couldn't have therapy every single day. And that's what also led me to other ways to try and cope with my grief.
Okay.
So I found other ways. Look, the one thing that started happening for me, first of all, people will tell you when you're grieving, you can't really concentrate, which is true. But a friend of mine had given me a book on a woman. It's actually Sheryl Sandberg's book on when she lost. It's called Option B.
Option B.
When she had lost her husband. And I read that book. And after that, I couldn't get my hands on enough reading material, or rather fast enough.
Okay.
So I started reading. And I was reading and reading and reading. But from all of that reading, I started journaling. I felt like every day I needed to talk to Dean.
Okay.
So I started journaling. Initially, it started as just writing notes on my phone, writing letters to him.
Okay.
You know, with all of my thoughts, whether they were deeply sad, deeply painful, whatever. And there were times, because when I look back at those notes, there were times where I was having a good day.
Okay.
And I'd write about the good day. Journaling became part of my other therapy. Okay. So I started doing that every day. I started looking for ways to be grateful, for acknowledging what was good in my life. And it's very, very difficult when you're going through such a dark time and you're grieving. But I forced myself to acknowledge. Okay. And that also helped me, you know, just cope.
Okay. So from a therapy perspective, I guess strong will perspective, and from a support structure, how was the support structure? And how do people lean on support structures? And one of the things I'm going to highlight is a friend said a very important thing. He's unhappy at work, right? And him and his wife have gone through the same phase. But you got to a point where it's like, okay, we can't be talking about this for 2 years, you know? But I just want to understand, how was support structure from a positive and negative perspective that helped you, and things that you obviously reflect?
So I think many people viewed me differently. Well, look, the unconditional support came from my parents and my sisters.
Are both your parents still alive?
My parents are still alive. So there was unconditional support from them. And then also from, I've got an uncle who's a clinical psychologist. I've got, an educational psychologist. He was extremely supportive, checking in on us all the time, speaking to us. There were other members of the family that made sure we were okay, that would just come and sometimes just sit with us because they knew it was too difficult to even talk about the experience. So in terms of support and family support, we had that. I also had great support from many of my friends.
Okay.
There were situations where things changed because people see you differently now. You know, you go from being Dean's wife, couple, you do things together, now you're alone. And lots of people don't know how to deal with that.
Okay.
So certain people just kind of
Fizzled away,
which is, you know, I get that. At the time it was hurtful, but you know, it is what it is. And I didn't dwell on that. But there was enough support. There really was enough support. And fortunately, because I'm close to my parents and my sisters, they allowed us to cry. They cried with us. My mom would cook food for us. She would make sure we're okay. On the times where I was really having bad days, they knew that my children would need to be checked on. And so, support was great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And his side of the family?
I'd rather not talk about that.
Okay, cool.
Because that's, you know, those, I think
okay, cool.
we won't talk about that.
Okay, cool. And then from a reflection perspective, if you look at, I guess, giving people advice on the process that you went through, right? Positive, negatives, what advice would you give anyone that is dealing with something similar or has?
You know, the thing is, I think advice is so difficult to give to anyone who's grieving because although grief follows those stages that they tell you it follows, everybody grieves differently depending on the relationship. So it's difficult to give advice. But what I will say is, as far as possible, you need to make that choice.
Okay.
You know, where do you want to be? Where do you want to stay? How are you going to navigate this? Okay. And there are ways to deal with it. There are ways to, it's not like, grief is not an illness. There's no fix to it. You've got to find ways to cope with your grief. Cool. Some people find it in immediately getting into another relationship. Other people find going and living alone. For me, traveling was a big thing. Okay. Maybe it was something I did because I ran away. Okay. But I realized running away, your grief's still with you. Okay. So there's, you know, I think for each person it's so different and it's so personal. Okay. So I wouldn't have like fixed advice. Okay. I'd just say, just find what works for you, but just don't stay in the dark, that dark space. And that's a key advice that you've given. Don't stay in the dark place. And I want to go back to therapy aspect of things. Is that I guess we now live in a modern society where therapy is normal compared to back in the day. So I've had a friend who was like, I'm not going to date a guy who's not gone to therapy. And through my journey to understanding therapy is that sometimes it depends on the therapist that you get or the methodology and also your level of readiness, right? If we can just reflect on what are the key things that therapy helped you through that specific part of your life. I think initially therapy allowed me to be, the space allowed me to just grieve, and talk about Dean and talk about the loss and talk about how I felt and, you know, all of those things. It allowed me to unpack many things. Okay. It was just a safe space to really, really just grieve and cry and have someone unbiased to listen to me. Okay. You know, and also going every week made me realize that after a while I'm talking about the same things. I keep talking about grief, and I had to ask myself, is it helping me or am I staying in that same place? Because every time I go back, I talk about the same thing. And that was happening for quite a long time. But I think because I also started doing other things to help myself, I was making steps. Okay. You know, I was moving. I wouldn't say I was moving on, but I was moving forward a little bit. Baby steps. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So therapy, you can walk away to say that therapy works. You know, yes, I think it does work. Okay. I do think it does work, but I think it's vitally important to have the right therapist. The right therapist, yeah. And the method and engagement, because sometimes it's there's psychodynamics, there's CBT, there are different ways depending on what you're going through and what foundation the therapist needs to go through. And I think that that's something that people aren't necessarily aware when they look for therapists and vice versa. Because I'll give you an example. So we were each going for our own therapy, individually. Including my children. Okay. And then we decided, well, we were disagreeing on certain things, and then we decided we're going to go and find a therapist that can do a group session with us. And we found a therapist, but it didn't work at all.
Okay.
She initially saw me as this mother that wants to be in charge, and she started speaking about the Indian dynamic, which had nothing to do with
Which is not part of the
No.
Well, there's a generalist view, but you're not part of that dynamic.
And also, our issue at the time was grief. Okay. It had nothing to do with anything else. Okay. We could have been black, yellow, cool. Any color.
Okay.
It had nothing to do with that. So we just didn't gel.
Okay.
Not that there was anything wrong with the therapist, not that she didn't know what she's doing
at that point,
but it just didn't work for us. Okay. And I knew at the time, we're not going to go back. So when it comes to therapy, I think the important thing is, even if you go 2 or 3 times, yes, it's money wasted, but you have to find the right person.
Yeah, you have to find the right person.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I'd been for many sessions, and as life started changing, I realized, I think my time with her is done, because she no longer served what I needed
at that point in time.
While I was grieving, and that's what I needed at the time. But as I was moving forward and doing different things in my life, it no longer worked. We didn't resonate anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I understand that. And some therapists decide there's a point where it's not making sense. And, I thought therapists, not to take away, were very soft, empathetic people, but I realized that they can, and some of the things that you're saying, they can challenge us in terms of our view, and sometimes we don't necessarily agree, and the tough questions for us to figure out.
Yes.
But I think it is a very good way for us to deal with different aspects.
Yes, definitely.
As long as we're not codependent on that aspect of things and the journey throughout that. So thank you very much for being very vulnerable and open in terms of sharing that. I think a lot of us need to understand the value and how it works specifically. But now I want to come back to, I guess, why we're here. I know we've spoken and we unpack in terms of yourself, the journey that you've been through and the grief. But the main point is the podcast.
Yeah.
Please tell us about the podcast, how it started, and what's the objective of the podcast?
So after Dean had passed away, I then gave up my beauty business.
Okay.
And I went on this journey of trying to heal myself and finding this path or rather trying to navigate this new identity that I had. And I then decided, I still need to do something. I still need to run a business. But what if I found a business that could help other people?
Okay.
And that's how Ikigai Awakening was born.
Okay.
I then did all kinds of courses and learnings. Some of it I'd done years before. I then did NLP training, life coach training. I'd done grief coaching and a whole host of other things.
Okay.
And alternative therapies like Reiki and access bars. And there's just been many of those.
Okay.
And that's how Ikigai Awakening was born. And then one day I was sitting and I was sort of thinking, okay, not everybody's going to come to me. How do I reach other people?
Okay.
The intention was for this podcast to be one of helping other people going through the same thing without perhaps those people don't have the means. Okay. Not that we're taking away or trying to be therapists or those kind of things, but just maybe something on the podcast may
create awareness, identify with the same challenges that you've gone through.
Yes, and in some small way, just give somebody hope.
Okay.
And that was my intention with this podcast was, okay, so do this podcast and see how and who can come on this podcast to talk about things, to talk about challenges. And it doesn't necessarily have to, initially I thought it would just be about grief. But then I thought, no, it can be about any challenge that somebody's facing or challenges people take on.
Okay.
Because these are the kind of things that help you move forward in life. And that's how it was really born, to try and see how we can reach those people that need to hear something. We live in a country, and not just a country, we live in a world where there's so many awful things happening. There's so many, and I mean, especially after COVID, so many people are going through challenges and struggles and all kinds of horrible things. So if we can just say, listen to somebody else's story and let's see how they found hope, how they continued their journey. Let's see how we can encourage other people to do the same. It's not easy.
Okay.
Some challenges are just so huge that nothing you say can help.
Okay.
But we try.
Okay. In terms of that. Okay, that's great. The name Ikigai, can you give more context of what does it mean? Firstly, how do you spell it? I've seen it, but the spelling and the meaning.
Okay, so it's Ikigaie. Okay. Ikigai is a Japanese word that means reason for being.
Okay.
And how that came about and how I named my business Ikigai Awakening was when I had realized that I wanted to start this wellness business of mine, I had no clue what it really looked like. And I had no name for the business. And I remember going to bed one night and I just spoke to Dean and I said, Dean, you know what? I need a name for this business. I'm not sure how this business looks, but I need a name to start off with. And the next day I woke up and it was as clear as day that I was calling this business Ikigai Awakening, because I was trying to find my reason for being. I was trying to find my purpose because I'd lost purpose. I didn't know now, where to from here? You're a single woman. You left your parents' home, got married, lived with this man, and now you're doing a whole new life in a completely different way. You need to find purpose. You need to find what is your reason for being. And that's how the name Ikigai Awakening was born. Yeah.
Okay. Podcast was launched last year, am I correct?
Podcast was launched last year. Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to have Angela Jung as my first guest.
Who's Angela Jung?
So Angela Jung, she's actually a jewelry designer, but she's also a philanthropist. And she was one of the first women to summit the north side of Everest. Okay. Yes. I met her many years ago through a business program that we did through Nedbank and the Women of Stature. And we just formed a relationship. And the reason why I wanted her on the show was because she climbed Everest to raise awareness for young girls who go to school and who don't have sanitary pads every month. So it was and bra. She did this whole big bra initiative. I think it was part of the climb because she had climbed Kili before. So it was all to raise awareness and funds for these girls from disadvantaged communities, which is, she does wonderful work. So I thought it would be great to have somebody like that on the show to motivate other young people and to motivate other women or people.
Okay. So I saw a bit of that episode, and one of the things she talks about was she's from Hong Kong, right? Grew up in the Free State.
Yes.
Raised by a single father whose mother just disappeared.
Yeah.
Can you just talk more about that experience on her side and the impact?
So because of her childhood and and all the circumstances, here was someone that had to face. She talks about in the podcast about how she had to hide under her dad's desk because everybody wanted her to go to an orphanage, but her dad kept her. And this is somebody that had been through so much, and then had to move countries, and then had to deal with not having a mother around, but built the resilience to do such great things and impact the world in such a big way. And not even in her own home country, to come to another country and do that. And for me, that was huge. I thought that's a story that really needs to be spoken about and to be shared. And I have so much respect for the work that she does. She's spoken far and wide, and she's told the story many, many times over. And it's very inspirational, not, to me at my age, but also to younger women. Yeah.
And which, it seems like you have quite a great network of influential people. So which other people have been part of your podcast?
So I've had Kobus Visser. Kobus Visser is a firewalker and an author and a motivational speaker. And he's got an interesting story as well. He was a hemophiliac and he was in a wheelchair. His story is...
Let's go back. Definition of hemophiliac is?
I think the blood, I stand to be corrected, but I think it's when the blood doesn't clot. Okay, cool. So if you get a cut or something, cool. It's very difficult for the blood to stop flowing, I think. But anyway, it affected him hugely. And this is a man that they said wouldn't walk and all of that. And then he started his journey, and he started walking on fire and on glass and doing these amazing things. And I had an experience with him where I went to a Robin Banks workshop. And I remember when I was invited to this workshop, I made it very clear that I was not interested in firewalking. I had no interest in it. It's something that was not for me. I said after the session, I would leave. And then Kobus came on, and I stood on the sidelines watching everybody, and they were chanting something about fire. And something in me said, try it. Just go. And I remember saying to my friend, you know what, I'm going to go. And she was surprised because she, I'd said to her, nah, I'm not doing this. And I walked across the fire. And for me, that was like, oh my goodness, you can do whatever you want. It was like such a big thing. But coming back to Kobus, these are the kind of things he's done with his life, big things. I think he's also climbed Kilimanjaro, if I'm not mistaken. But he's done huge things. Yeah. And he continues to motivate, and he continues to do his work in such an inspirational way. And again, with all the challenges that he faced, health challenges, financial challenges, all of that, he has still managed to do such great work. And for me, it's again about the resilience and about, not letting your circumstances dictate the impact you make on the world.
Okay.
And on the people around you.
Okay. I saw there was one of your episodes, Lynn Forbes.
Yes.
How do you know Lynn Forbes?
So I don't know her personally, but I met her through somebody that I know, also through one of my networks. And I was very honored to have her on my show, as I am with all of my guests. But in this case, it was also about grief. Okay. It was about grief and losing your child. Yeah. It wasn't about all the public stuff and all of that. It was about having a mother who I relate to because she's my age, but she's gone through huge loss and in such a public way. So I just wanted her on the show because I don't think there've been many interviews where she's spoken about it. Okay. And surprisingly, on the podcast, she spoke beautifully about her whole journey and experience. And again, wonderful, inspirational woman who has continued to do great things despite this grief of losing a child. Because I think, I say grief is different for each person, but it's also different when you lose a spouse as opposed to losing a child. Losing a child in such a tragic way, in such a public way. So for me, it was a wonderful thing to have her on the show and for her to share her journey and then also talk about all the fun things that she does. Despite the grief, despite the pain she's feeling, she still manages to find joy in life, to find happiness, to go for dancing lessons, to make time with her granddaughter. All things that people can see, there is still hope. Even in the deepest, darkest times, there is still hope. Yeah.
And in this situation, unfortunately, obviously hers is public, and at some point there's going to be a trial. Yes. And you've got to go through there and go through a public in this situation, a public trial to find out who's accountable for the death of your son.
Which compounds your grief and your sorrow and all of the things you're going through. And now still that. So it makes it, I think it's difficult. I think it's very hard. And I really, really think she's a brave, phenomenal woman. She really is. She's a very inspirational woman. I wish, if anybody hasn't listened to that podcast, please listen, because she is very inspirational. And she is very honest about who she is and where she's from and what she's been through as a woman.
Okay.
So, yeah.
How did you convince her to join your podcast?
It didn't take much to convince
you just
her.
Told her what it was about
I just asked her to come through. I was very respectful of what she was comfortable speaking about and what she wasn't. And I think that's the big thing. But it didn't take much convincing. She was actually very kind and very accommodating, which I'm very grateful for.
Okay. I'm going to go to the other guests, but I need to ask a question, and you've brought it up, and I picked up at the beginning, right? You mentioned that your older brother passed away.
Yes.
How long ago was that?
That was a year after Dean, so in 2022. Yes.
Compounding. And what did he pass away from?
He was ill. He was ill for a very short time.
Okay.
And then he passed away.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess it's a very difficult aspect because of the timing, and it's a compounded thing. And I liked what you said about grieving a child versus a husband versus a mother is a bit different, right? So if you were to talk about your experience on those two losses, what were the similarities and differences? Because from the conversations we've had, it seems as if your husband's one death seems to be something that hits you a little bit more.
Yes, definitely. It's not that I didn't feel my brother's loss. It's just that I think I was saying to somebody the other day, I find sometimes being alone difficult because I spent so much time with Dean, and he was my best friend, and he was my go-to, and he was my confidant, which sometimes meant that I was closest to him.
Yeah, he was your best friend.
Even though I'm close to my family and I'm close to my siblings, he was the one I was closest to.
Yeah.
So not that I didn't grieve my brother, and not that I didn't feel for my parents' loss. It's just...
And it's also your loss, your brother. I think
yes,
you grew up in the same house
yes.
for, let's say, 18 years of the foundation. Yeah.
And but having lost Dean was, for me, way more impactful because he was my partner. He was the person I went to. He was the one I was just closest to, So yes, but it was different. It definitely was different. But Dean's death did impact me way more. Yeah.
Okay. Which is understandable.
Yeah.
So back to the podcast again. Sorry, as you mentioned, the dynamics, I felt that I need to ask that question. Which other guests can we expect when we go and, go back and watch all the episodes? Because you talked about Angela, Lynn Forbes, Kobus.
Then there is, there's Koo Govender.
Okay.
And there is...
Pause. Who's Koo Govender?
Koo Govender is a media marketing mogul.
Okay.
She is, she's been the CEO of many companies. I'm trying to think of the company. I can't get it. I can't think of it
DSTV,
right now.
Mnet.
She was before that, yes.
She was Pubis, I think, yeah.
Yes. And one of the reasons why I wanted Koo on the show was because I know her personally, but also she lost her husband a few months after I lost Dean.
Okay.
She's also got children similar ages. So we kind of went through the same journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to talk about somebody who is in the spotlight so often and who's got this fabulous career and who's at the top of a game, now having to deal with that and still the loss of her husband because they also had a wonderful relationship. So I needed to have her on the show to talk about grief that's similar to mine. And also because during this 4.5 years that I've lost Dean, I've met so many other women who've lost their partners and so many of my friends who've lost their partners. So I thought, okay, well, this may be a show, a podcast that will speak to those women and other women.
Okay.
Which was quite impactful. And, she's a very, she's very religious when it comes to, she's a Christian woman. So she spoke of her Christian values and of having older children and of navigating life alone and still being a career woman and all of those things, which is just everyday stuff that we have to deal with despite our challenges, our losses, our grief.
And you got to go there and you got to run a multi-million company.
Yes.
And concentrate and make big
be on
decisions.
Your A game.
Because you're not going to have an opportunity to take a year, 2 years off in terms of, someone passes away at work, you get a few days to go for a funeral, you got to back and produce.
Yes. And as I said to you earlier, when you lose someone, your world stops, but the world out there doesn't stop. It continues. So there's still an expectation for you to perform, to be there, to, if you are the CEO of a company or you are running your own business, you are still expected to be there to perform and to deliver. Because you still have bills to pay.
Yeah, you still have bills, companies need to, the world needs to happen. Anyone else that we haven't touched from a podcast perspective?
I had which I call quite a fun alternative one. I had a lady called Angela Whitehouse on my show. Angela Whitehouse is a spiritualist lady. She does all kinds of things like tarot reading and like very alternative, doesn't appeal to everybody, but it was something tarot reading.
Okay, what's that?
And, the cards where she can talk about certain things, certain aspects of your life. She spoke about crystals. Those are things I'm into, but I know there's a lot of people out there that are now. And just about spirituality in an alternative way. And I did Reiki with her, so I also wanted her to touch on Reiki and the benefits of Reiki.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You have some powerful people on your podcast, I must say. So props to you in terms of roping everyone in and getting people in and talking about this journey specifically. From where do we now find your podcasts? How often do you release your podcasts?
So we need to, this year I intend to release at least 2 podcasts a month, but that's not always easy. It is the intention, but whether I will pull that off, I'm not 100% sure. I do have a lineup. I don't want to mention names because you're in the game.
Okay.
It sometimes doesn't always work out, but I have a great lineup of people that I have in mind for the podcast this year. But I'm also starting, I think as we go along, the podcast will evolve.
Okay.
Because I don't just want this podcast to be about grief.
Okay.
I think there's so many other wonderful things happening in the world that we can talk about. We have got so many South African people that have got fabulous stories to share, sad stories to share. And there are many stories that need to be told.
Okay.
I mean, it's great to have all the powerful people on the show, but then I also want those women who are not known, that nobody knows, that have stories to tell that the world needs to hear. So in as much as I'm going to get people on the show that are powerhouses, I also want the ordinary people to be on the show that have got a story to tell.
Okay. And that's good. And I love that. And not to publicize things and make it, all.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think the podcast space is a very interesting space. I think there's a lot of people that are doing it, and you've got to find differentiation aspect of things. So if you think about, like, I guess, unique aspects of your evolving podcast, right? What makes it unique that you feel that people need to come and listen and subscribe and be part of this?
I think it's my approach to life.
Okay.
I think because of everything that's happening in the world, and we're bombarded with all the negative stories most of the time. I think we have to find platforms where we can have stories that have turned negatives into positives.
Okay.
Or hear stories that are sad and see how we can help, how people out there can help turn a sad story into a positive one. I know there are lots of radio stations that do things like that, but I think I don't think every radio station has the capacity to help many people. So I think even us unknown podcasters can start
and making an impact.
Difference. And for me, it's about making a difference and making an impact.
Okay.
So that's what this podcast, I'm hoping, will evolve into.
Okay. And your podcast mainly on YouTube? Are there any other platforms?
It's on YouTube and on Spotify.
On Spotify, okay. And if you want, search Ikigai Awakening, and you'll be able to find the podcast.
Yeah.
So in closing, I guess as Toastmasters, we normally say that there's the red card, the amber card that is coming. So from my side, there are 2 things. I know you've written a book and you haven't spoken about that. So please tell us more about that book.
Okay, so when I spoke to you earlier about the grief and about those letters that I was writing to Dean and the journaling that I was doing, I had these thoughts of that time and those days where he, after he passed away, that I played in my head continuously. I played those scenes over and over in my head. And I just had this need to write about them. Okay. I needed to write. And I thought, well, I'm going to share this with the world. I don't know what the impact will be. I don't know how people will respond to it. But it was more about me writing my story and getting it out there and see where it's going. But it was almost like a release in many ways. I just needed to put all of that down on paper.
Okay. In that, do you talk about what do you talk about in the book? And what's the title of the book?
The title of the book is Among Cherry Blossoms and Unicorns.
Okay.
And I talk about the loss, losing Dean. I talk about the time just before the loss, what led up to it, losing him, and life after that.
Okay.
I talk about the retreats that I went on, the traveling that I did, but all the while, it's trying to let people know that, the cherry blossoms actually symbolize that something good will come. Okay. And I explain it in the book. It's about how you will see the cherry blossom one day. A tree can be barren for a very, very long time. You may not see those cherry blossoms, then suddenly you see that one blossom, and then okay, I can breathe, something good's going to happen. The unicorn is symbolic of that life still holds magic.
Okay.
Life holds magic if you are open to receiving or experiencing that magic. And for example, one of the first trips I went on was a retreat to Bali after Dean passed away. And I was in a very bad way. My grief I was at my lowest, grieving, not understanding where I'm going with my life. And when I went on this retreat, I decided when I was there that I'm going to embrace this. Whatever comes my way, I'm going to handle it. I would never, ever have swam in the sea in my life ever before.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have done half of the things I did when I was in Bali, but I decided, well, that's it. Okay. I am going to do all of these things. And that is what I call the magic of life.
Okay.
I learned to see that there is still magic
in life.
There is still, the unicorn is, even though it doesn't exist, but it is symbolic of the magic that life still holds, no matter what happens.
Okay. I'm going to bring it. How do we get the book? Where do we find the book?
You can find it on .com.
Okay.
Or you can contact me,
okay.
Nerina at ikigaiawakening.co.za. You can also buy it on Take-A-Lot. It's available on Amazon, okay. But I also have copies. So if people are struggling to get it, they can just contact me. How much? It's 300 Rand.
300 Rand.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you need to, obviously, if we need to courier it, then there's a courier charge.
Okay. I wish I had more time to unpack the book and stuff, and we're running out of time. But there's just a few pertinent questions that I need to ask, and we will make it a bit brief. You talked about you have an adopted son, right?
Yes.
When did you adopt?
So he was my helper's boy. So
okay.
So obviously we've had him since he was born.
Okay.
And there are various reasons why we decided to adopt. His mother's still in the picture. But it's been a wonderful journey. It's been a wonderful lesson of, seeing how easy it is to open your heart. People think that adoption can be difficult, or that loving somebody that's not your blood is a difficult thing. It's the easiest thing to love another child. It really is the easiest thing. Oh. So there were many lessons that I learned, and many lessons that my older children learned.
Okay.
And Dean as well, because
when did you adopt him?
He's now 12, so it's not finalized as such.
Cool. So I know that if we had time, and one of my podcasts, I'm having a conversation with a friend about the adoption thing, but it's not a very simplistic and easy process in terms of that.
No.
So that's really amazing, and I wish we could unpack that a little bit more. But now I've got two last questions for us to end. Are you seeing anyone? Are you single still?
I'm very, very much single. I'm not seeing anyone. I don't have any intentions of seeing anybody. I think, and I say that because my life at the moment is very focused on business.
Okay.
Very focused on business, because I think when you're a single woman and you still got financial commitments and other commitments and things to take care of, it becomes your priority. And that for me right now is my priority. Also, I had a marriage that was, I think, in many ways rare.
Okay.
It was such a well-balanced, good marriage that I don't think I'm ready for anything like that yet.
And men can be problematic.
Yeah. So I'm just, I'm really, really just focused on my business and making sure that, in the next couple of years, I'm financially free and I've got all of those things. And I find business extremely exciting. So that's where my focus is at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
But don't let that be a blind spot for you also finding happiness and having a different story that could have companionship as part of life. And likely you've gone through a journey where you were with someone for at least 30 years, or not 3 years of your life, and you built a great family. So that's a great journey you got. But I'm just saying, sometimes open and enjoy. And I guess the last permanent question that I have is, we've obviously met through Toastmasters.
Yes.
Why Toastmasters, and what value has it offered you?
So initially Toastmasters was to help me with my business.
Okay.
But also, one of the reasons why I chose Toastmasters, and particularly the 4 Ways one, it's being a widow or losing your spouse, your whole life changes. Your social circles change. Your free time or your spare time changes, and you end up spending a lot of time alone on weekends. Mm-hmm. And yes, there's family, and yes, you can spend time with that, but also you need something different.
Okay.
And I needed to find something constructive that would benefit me, my business, but also where I could meet other people and engage and talk and have connection. because when you alone a lot of the time, your thoughts can become quite dark and morbid. So joining Toastmasters was for a number of reasons: to meet people, to engage, to chat, to talk, and to learn something wonderful. Like public speaking, I think anybody can benefit from that.
Okay. Yeah. And your public speaking journey, has it started to transition? Is that a goal on your side to become a speaker or to improve from, I guess, a communication platform? Because this also helps from a Toastmasters perspective.
Well, I'd certainly like it to get better and reach the point of being a very confident public speaker.
Okay.
And that was the goal initially, but things have kind of, because of my business, it's a little bit challenging at the moment to focus as much as I need to on Toastmasters. Okay. Trying to get the balance right in life is always difficult.
Yeah, I get that. But Nerina, I guess I've gone over time. We've spoken a lot, and I'm a person who likes to ask questions, and we could have another 3 episodes of this, and for us to obviously unpack different aspects, because even the business aspect, we haven't even spoken about the business aspects and your learnings and who you are specifically. But what you're obviously doing is amazing.
Thank you.
The stories, and this is a personal investment to bring out stories to people.
Yes.
And starting a podcast is not a very easy and simplistic thing. No. And the people that you brought in the journey that you're going. So I'm very blessed and grateful that you have asked me to get to know you and to make sure that your audience understands who you are. Yes. And I'm definitely, if you want me back, definitely open to having more conversations and unpacking, because even as you speak about the book, I mean, we can have an episode on the book and discuss the book. And I feel that maybe that's also where Toastmasters will give feedback.
Yes.
Cutting yourself short, because you've got to advertise more on that.
Yes.
And people who have books. It's a good way of, obviously, from an income perspective. So props to you in terms of obviously writing a book and going through this journey. And once again, my obviously condolences from Dean's passing away. And I wish you all the best and health.
Thank you.
As you journey through life specifically.
No, thank you. And thank you for doing this for me. It means so much. It's been something that I've been toying with for a long time, but I thought, now who do I get to do this? So I'm really, really grateful and honored to have you here. And I do think that there's a lot of synergy between us and our podcast. And I think people must look out for us. Yeah. I believe we've got some good things coming our way.
Good things, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
My podcast is called Coffee with Kofi. And my thing is around talking about the challenges that men go through and the conversations that men don't have. And my first episode, I spoke to a friend who can't have a child and is sterile, and the societal aspect and the marriage and, should we get divorced and should you find out you can have a kid before? But I mean, the reality is a lot of stuff we talk about the woman's side and we don't talk about the men's side and the role men play and how men must also deal. I mean, you have miscarriages and some people say that, the man has to be there for the woman, but he's also going through a loss.
Yes.
As much as your family had a loss in terms of your kids, you have to be there for your kids, but you also have to be there for yourself.
Yes.
And those become very complex things in terms of that.
And they need to be discussed a lot.
They need to be discussed a lot.
So I would love in the future for us to, do more of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Jointly.
We'll do that.
Thank you
very much. And thank you very much for, Nerina, for having me here. Hopefully I will see you guys at some point and you guys would have enjoyed the show. Thanks.
Thank you.